A new appearance by Putin and new hypotheses. Something incredible is spreading across the internet. There really is something wrong with the dictator. Everyone noticed Putin's strange behavior. The video was originally published by the Russian movement Healthy Fatherland. It discusses the initiative to ban vapes in Russia.
The main question is to give your order to consider introducing a complete ban on vapes in the territory of the Russian Federation. Of course, we would all like to live in good health, both physical and mental.
We are of one mind.
We are ready.
So the government will support it.
We ourselves go to the locations and record violations. At the moment, there are more than 5,000 violations, and now we really need your support.
What's important is not only the decision, but also the implementation.
Yes. Thank you very much for listening to us and supporting us. Thank you so much.
Later, the Natalev Telegram channel published a video featuring the head of the Kremlin and showed his hands separately.
Funeral processions are a thing of the past. Now bazooka arms are in fashion. Online, people are puzzled about what happened to the hands of the Russian dictator. They look extremely unhealthy. Amusingly, in the video, people wished Putin good health. Or maybe he's an alien humanoid.
This is far from the first time the media has paid attention to Putin's health condition. For example, the British publication The Sun also noticed something was wrong. They even wrote that the Russian dictator shows signs of Parkinson's disease. He looks unwell. They also pointed out the unnatural postures of the Kremlin leader. The health condition of the 73-year-old Putin has repeatedly become a topic of discussion in the media. There have even been reports that the dictator is suffering from cancer. In April 2022, the Russian publication Projekt released an investigation into Putin's health. It found that there is an oncologist on the Russian president's medical team. Also, according to them, the composition of the doctors is quite telling.
Otolaryngologists Alexei Sheglov and Igor Yasakov, as well as surgeon Evgeny Selivanov, are Putin's most frequent companions. For example, over 4 years, Sheglov flew to Sochi to see Putin 59 times, spending a total of 282 days with him. Selivanov did so 35 times, for a total of 166 days.
This team of doctors is by Putin's side when he stays at his residence in Sochi and during periods when he does not appear in public for a long time. Projekt reports that Selivanov specialized in diagnosing and treating thyroid cancer in elderly and senior patients. In addition, the head of the GUR, Kirilo Budanov, also spoke about Putin's serious illness. For example, in December 2022, British media reported that Putin had been diagnosed with several serious illnesses: cancer, schizoaffective disorder, and Parkinson's disease. Budanov also confirmed this information.
Back in 2021, there was a statement. It seems to me that Putin is very ill with cancer. And now everyone is starting to say that something is wrong with him. Time will tell who was right.
Urgent. Putin is preparing to rule until 2050. The British have revealed the Kremlin's terrifying plan. You will be surprised when you hear it. The 73-year-old dictator dreams of sitting on the throne for years. And shock, there is already a successor? Watch further for all the details of this sensational investigation.
The Russian dictator Putin has already ruled longer than many of his predecessors, and a new publication only adds fuel to the fire of rumors, according to a British tabloid. He allegedly wants to stay in power until the age of 97.
Do you really think that people will be able to live 150 years or even longer?
Yes, I think when we were going to the parade, the chairman talked about this. Well, yes, this topic at one time, Mr. Berlusconi didn't really pursue actively.
His power is so concentrated that the question of when he will leave now sounds less like an expectation and more like rhetoric. The constitution was rewritten, the terms were reset, and he can remain president until 2036.
Modern means of health improvement, medical treatments, even various surgical procedures related to organ replacement allow humanity to hope that active life will continue differently than it does today.
But the plans, it seems, are even broader. Putin's inner circle is reportedly overseeing projects related to life extension in which his eldest daughter, Maria Vorontsova, an endocrinologist, is also involved in scientific initiatives.
We know that Putin's eldest daughter, endocrinologist Maria Vorontsova, works in this same field. In a field where, much to the delight of the ruling elders, technologies of the distant future are mixed in, like genome editing to prevent cell division from degrading over time, and 3D printing of entire organs, as well as various otherworldly antics like meetings with shamans.
Perhaps it's no coincidence that we recently noticed a video where Putin and Xi Jinping discuss how human life will be significantly longer, whether this is preparation for a new era in which both the state and its leader will remain in power much longer.
In the past, people rarely lived to 70. Now at 70, you're still a child. And how does Putin respond to that? With the help of biotechnology, organs will be able to be replaced endlessly. People might even achieve immortality. To which Xi Jinping responds once again. Some predict that in this century, people will be able to live up to 150 years.
Obviously, there will be no retirement. He clings to power, ruling not only today but also the decades to come. And everything around suggests that he has no intention of leaving the political stage just yet. We
have long known that the president of the Kurchatov Institute, Mikhail Kovalchuk, is not only obsessed with the genome of Russianness. He not only talks about genetic weapons aimed exclusively at Slavs, but also leads large-scale research in the field of aging and its prevention.
A leader who has set a record for time at the helm, a school of management without a successor, and scientific technological projects in which his family is integrated. All of this adds up to a troubling image. The image of a person who is not just counting on another term, but on a long-term life in the seat of power.
There's nothing surprising about two elderly dictators meeting and discussing how to cheat death, just as there's no doubt that this question occupies their minds more and more with each passing year. How can they stop this perfect moment and make sure the future never arrives? After all, in that future, they do not exist, which is absolutely unacceptable.
If the sources are to be believed, the price for this has been and remains extremely high. Not just for him, but for the entire system in which he has become the center.
But it's not only Putin's health that's failing him. A purge of the Russian elite is brewing. Everyone is betraying Putin one after another. General Gerasimov is hanging by a thread, and Putin is preparing to remove the military leadership because of failures at the front. The partisans have obtained exclusive information.
The Kremlin is extremely dissatisfied with his work and the falsified reports from the front. Putin has given Gerasimov a deadline to capture Pokrovsk by mid-November. This order is the general's last chance to keep his position.
According to the Atesh movement, candidates to replace Gerasimov are already being discussed in Putin's inner circle. The most likely successor is said to be Colonel General Viktor Poznakir, who has a reputation as a controllable and more Kremlin-loyal officer. Meanwhile, the youth uprising against Putin's dictatorship is only gaining momentum with each passing day. But the good Russian singer Nauka, who performed anti-war and anti-Putin songs in St. Petersburg and was almost gathering a Maidan, found followers on the streets of the city.
The concert was interrupted by the police. At least 3 musicians were detained and are being taken to the first police department.
The local authorities are getting nervous. Hot news is reaching Putin. The backroom channels sense something is wrong, and the propagandists are starting to whine.
It's striking how much the Russian authorities are afraid of children and words.
What can I say? It seems Putin is now afraid of absolutely everything. The Kremlin is on the verge of exploding. The bunker dictator, who for years seemed all-powerful, now sees conspiracies everywhere. His associates are turning away, generals are whispering, and the elites are quietly packing their bags. Will the Bunker King's throne fall in the near future? Watch more about this coming up next.
For almost a quarter of a century, Vladimir Putin has been building a system of personal power in Russia, a totalitarian state where any dissent is punished to instill fear and cement the regime. But today, this monolith is starting to crack. The Russian dictator is in a panic, afraid of losing his grip on Russia. As the Telegraph writes, the bunker dweller carefully protects his regime from any threats. Recently, the FSB accused Mikhail Khodorkovsky and 22 other members of the Russian anti-war committee of preparing a coup d'etat. According to the security service, the organization is allegedly planning a violent seizure of power and the overthrow of the constitutional order.
This tells us that the Kremlin is paranoid. Putin is looking for enemies in an attempt to strengthen his regime. John Herbst, senior director of the Eurasia Center at the Atlantic Council and former US ambassador to Ukraine.
After spending 10 years in a Siberian prison, Khodorkovsky was released in 2013 and fled to Europe, where in 2022 he founded the Anti-War Committee. In an interview with The Telegraph, he stated that the FSB's accusation reflects the Kremlin's fear of the future and the issue of power transfer.
What do we have in Russia? A prime minister who was not elected by anyone, but appointed by Putin. Courts appointed by Putin. A parliament whose seats were filled as a result of fraudulent elections and in whose legitimacy no one believes. Mikhail Khodorkovsky, Russian entrepreneur and publicist.
They couldn't care less about the liberals who fled after being neutered. They're not afraid of them at all. They're not afraid of each other either. Of the same kind of predators, those who circle around you, smile in your face every day, and swear loyalty. Those are the ones who can. And Putin knows this perfectly well. And the Medvedev-Prigozhin incident, even if it was staged, clearly showed that no one is going to protect him. Neither the National Guard, nor the police, nor the rank and file, nor the generals, no one cares, no one gives a damn. And that's why Putin is afraid. And
indeed, fear becomes the key word. The dictator is cornered, and the economic situation only heightens the anxiety. Russia's Minister of Economy, Maxim Reshetnikov, has admitted that the country is on the verge of a recession. The banking system is suffocating under the debts of defense enterprises. According to Harvard analyst Craig Kennedy, $190 billion in loans have been issued to defense industry companies without any guarantees. And now this bubble could burst at any moment. Moreover, Ukrainian drones have destroyed more than half of Russia's oil refineries, forcing refuelers into huge lines at gas stations and causing a fuel shortage. And new sanctions from across the ocean have only intensified the blow. Donald Trump has imposed the most painful restrictions since the start of the war. The giants Rosneft and Lukoil have come under fire. Now China and India are reducing their purchases of Russian oil. Almost 3 million barrels per day are at risk. And with them, half of the Kremlin's revenue. But Putin fears not only internal threats, but also external ones. The dictator is pulling more and more air defense systems to the Kremlin. There are already 5 layers of defense around the capital. Panzer S-300 and S-400 systems are being brought in from all regions.
The betrayal of the century? China has abandoned Moscow. Putin is left alone. Reality is harsh. China is negotiating with the US without Moscow's involvement. The geopolitical axis is falling apart like a rotten stage set of an empire. Beijing has chosen profit over friendship. It acts independently, earns from bonds at the American rate, and receives the political bonus of legitimacy as an equal partner to the US. Putin has lost all his allies, his influence, and even the illusion of power. Moscow has turned into a raw materials appendage and a toxic burden.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
However, are the US really more loyal to China right now? And what is Trump actually planning by getting closer to the Middle Kingdom? I get along perfectly well with President Xi, but the only way to have a good relationship with China is to act from a position of strength. The US president recalled the imposition of large-scale tariffs against China during his first term and stated that it was precisely these steps that gave Washington tremendous leverage in its relations with Beijing.
During my first term, I imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions. I imposed tariffs on China very early on. Then COVID hit us. We fought, we handled it well, but it was COVID. It came from a certain place in China. Yes, remember? Another wonderful gift from China.
Trump emphasized that the United States has enormous power thanks to tariffs and the military.
They have a lot of missiles, but we have a lot too. And they don't want to deal with us. I can tell you this for sure.
Who would have thought the US and China, former trade rivals, now seem to be playing on the same team against Moscow? Sensational. Immediately after the meeting, the US lowers tariffs for China from 20% to 10%, and Trump rated his conversation with the Chinese leader a 12 out of 10. A new global alliance is taking shape, and there is no longer a place for the Kremlin in it. This is not just a diplomatic slap in the face, it's geopolitical retribution. The US and China have put Russia in its place and rewritten the world order without it. All the details coming up, don't miss it.
Donald Trump met with Xi Jinping in South Korea as part of his tour of the Indo-Pacific region. The main topics of the meeting were trade barriers between the countries and, of course, the Russia-Ukraine war.
They managed to establish a more forward-looking shared agenda for political dialogue, which in principle is a very positive outcome of this meeting.
As a result of the meeting, the parties agreed to reduce the tariff on Chinese goods related to fentanyl, a synthetic opioid analgesic, from 20% to 10%. The overall level of US tariffs will reach up to 47%.
The fundamental issues underlying the conflict between the US and China have not gone away. And these are very important questions, such as the fate of the island of Taiwan and the possibility of imposing tariffs on Chinese goods, specifically because of the purchase of Russian oil. Trump diplomatically stated that these issues were not raised, but in such cases, as a rule, when you don't reach an agreement, you say that you didn't talk about it.
The agreements regarding Ukraine turned out to be less effective, despite the fact that, according to the US president, Ukraine was discussed at length. Initially, Trump wanted to persuade Xi to reduce support for Russia so that Putin would agree to end the war. It was not announced whether the parties reached any agreement in this regard.
A strategic dialogue of cooperation has been established between authoritarian Russia and authoritarian Beijing. And in order to take on such a significant risk, Xi Jinping, as the leader of China, would need to be convinced that he is receiving something much more substantial and meaningful in return. This would have to be an offer or concession that truly matches the high level of diplomatic and economic relations that currently exist between the United States of America and Beijing, providing value and significance that is worthy of the risk involved. Given that, for now, relations are more strongly reminiscent of a logic of de-escalatory actions in the trade and economic sphere, I would not say that a formal strategic alliance or ongoing dialogue has been established between Washington and Beijing.
Donald Trump rated the meeting a 12 out of 10. By the way, this was the first meeting between the leaders of the US and China in the past 6 years.
Based on the statement, we see that there will be no tariffs on Chinese goods and that American agricultural products will have access, so the statement seems positive. But how true that really is, again, if we look at Trump's presidency, we remember, for example, Trump's claim that peace had been achieved in the Middle East after 3,000 years. You know, I'm someone who reads news from the Middle East, and what's happening there doesn't even remotely resemble achieving peace in that region to me. So, Trump's statement that everything has been agreed with China and everything is wonderful. Let's at least wait 48 hours and then see what happens.
Trump said that he had agreed with Xi Jinping on a visit to China in the spring of next year. After that, there will be a reciprocal visit by the Chinese leader to the United States.
And indeed, China has quickly lost interest in Russian oil. After the new US sanctions against energy giants Lukoil and Rosneft, Chinese oil refineries began to massively refuse Russian supplies. However, this is not the only reason. Xi has also set his sights on Russian territories. More details in the following report.
State giants like Sinopec and PetroChina are staying on the sidelines, having cancelled part of their Russian imports after last month's US sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil. Smaller private refineries, known as teapots, are also holding back, fearing similar penalties.
Russia is starting to panic. This is a real blow to the wallet. The main buyer has started shutting off the taps. And here are the first results. Deliveries have dropped by almost 400,000 barrels per day. That's about 45% of all Russian oil exports to China. And not so long ago, Russia was the main oil supplier to its ally. But now everything is going to hell. The oil friendship is falling apart at the seams. China is looking for profit, not pitying the Kremlin. And it seems that the era of cheap Russian oil is coming to an end. And yet another powerful slap in the face for Putin. A once loyal friend has started taking a region away from Russia. China is turning Siberia into its own resource base. This was reported by the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service.
One of the key examples is the Zashulan coal deposit in the Transbaikal region. Its development is being carried out by a joint venture between Russia's N+ group owned by Oleg Deripaska and China's Shenhua group. The cooperation is planned to last 100 years, and the Russian authorities have granted the company tax benefits. Starting in 2027, it is planned to transport 5 million tons of coal to China annually. That's about 500 trucks per day.
Moreover, a highway is being built for this purpose, and the jobs are going not to locals, but to Chinese specialists. The machine has been set in motion. Up to 2 million Chinese citizens already live in the Far East. It seems this is only the beginning of a silent occupation.
Even the symbol of Russia's natural wealth, Lake Baikal, is gradually becoming part of China's economic interests. This underscores just how much Moscow has lost control over its own resource-rich regions.
By the way, another major oil refinery, Yangchang Petroleum, has refused to purchase Russian oil in its latest tender for crude deliveries from December to mid-February. Previously, it regularly purchased Russian oil, usually one batch per month. I should add that a number of recent Western sanctions on Russian oil supplies have led Chinese state oil companies and some Indian refineries to avoid such purchases. Tensions are reaching a critical point. Russia has finally fallen in China's eyes. Now Washington is closer to Beijing than Moscow is. Everything finally changed after the meeting between Donald Trump and Xi. Beijing and Washington are re-establishing contact while Russia remains on the sidelines without allies and without influence. Xi made it clear that China is ready to talk to the US and prioritize stability over conflict.
China and the US can take on joint responsibility as major powers and work together to achieve greater and concrete results for the benefit of our two countries and the whole world.
Donald Trump and Xi have finally tightened the noose around Putin's neck.
We agree that the sides, are stuck and fighting, and sometimes perhaps you have to let them struggle it out. But he will help us, and we will work together on Ukraine.
Moreover, Xi has started acting according to his own plan regarding Russia as well. Behind closed doors, the Chinese leader is deciding the further fate of Putin's empire. The man in the bunker is watching this and is no longer hiding his panic. But he can't do anything about it. Right now, a juicy piece of Russia is passing into China's hands. What will happen next, and will the Kremlin chief dare to resist? More on this in just a minute.
Russia is losing the Far East, not officially, but in reality.
Without any exaggeration, the Far East has become the most important factor in strengthening Russia's position in the world. Our flagship in the new global economic reality.
While the Kremlin is busy with the war, the region is quietly being divided by its neighbors. China and North Korea?
I would actually call this a kind of creeping takeover, creeping migration. For now, of course, control over the Far East still remains in Moscow's hands, but there are more and more Chinese there, and they are playing an increasingly significant role in the economy. But as they say, today they play a big role in the economy, and tomorrow they'll play a big role in politics.
More than 1 trillion rubles in investments from China sounds like aid, but it's all centered around trade, not the development of the region.
China needs to use Russian resources on the cheap, and accordingly they will have that opportunity. And that's why I think this economic dependence of these regions on China will only continue to grow.
Also, the Chinese have long ceased to be guests in Russia.
Vladivostok is simply not needed. It should just be given to the Chinese. That's what they want to do after all. The Chinese can just come in and that's it. No one here will resist anymore. There will be no one to resist and nothing to resist with.
According to various estimates, up to 2 million people live from Vladivostok to the Urals.
This is called settling these territories with Chinese people, and in various forms at that. This includes both the migrants themselves, as well as mixed marriages, from which children are born. And accordingly, these regions are becoming more and more closely tied to China.
Now, about North Korea. In the Far East, just in the past year, more than 15,000 North Koreans have officially arrived, and unofficially up to 50,000. And that's not the limit yet. A total of 153,000 new labor contracts have already been ordered.
There isn't enough domestic labor in Russia today because so many people have been killed in the war. And accordingly, demographic problems still remain. So yes, there aren't enough of our own people. And in this sense, North Korea is an excellent supplier of labor resources because the people are disciplined and accordingly know how to march in step in every sense of the word.
So it turns out that Moscow has handed over the region for temporary use. But why?
Putin needs people whom, as he sees it, are easy to control. It doesn't matter, even if not directly, but through intermediaries. That's why he's confident that these people won't start a revolution, won't protest against Moscow's actions. He thinks these are very convenient people, and it would be good if Russia were populated by just such convenient people. After all, you never know what might happen with your own people.
But everything comes at a price. And the longer the Kremlin turns a blind eye, the more important the question becomes, who is really in control of the Far East?
In reality today, of course, Russia is a vassal of China, which China primarily utilizes to put pressure on Europe, especially in matters of international policy. And we understand that the real global confrontation is, of course, not between Russia and NATO, but between China and the United States, China and Europe. In this case, today's Russia is like a guard dog that obeys its master's every command.
So what happens next? Is it still possible for the Far East to return to Moscow's real control, or is the opposite more likely? The influence of China and North Korea will only continue to grow.
The influence of China and North Korea will only increase and accordingly, China will make its own decisions. Will it need to formally take all of this under its legal control? Or is it enough to have, well, let's say complete economic control today, and tomorrow that will become complete political control?
It seems that while Putin is focused on seizing other people's territories, he is gradually losing his own. And ironically, these territories are being taken not even by enemies, but by the Kremlin's allies.
A snow apocalypse has hit Russia. A powerful cyclone has struck Kamchatka. Storm winds are tearing off roofs, and heavy snowfall has paralyzed daily life. Residents are working remotely, planes have been urgently redirected to other airfields, and roads are blocked by trees that have been uprooted. Power lines can't withstand the weight of the snow. There are sparks, flashes, and power outages. Authorities are sounding the alarm, businesses are switching employees to remote work, and schools in Petropavlovsk, Kamchatsky, and the Yelizovsky district are closed. An avalanche warning has been issued in some areas. The airport is not operating. Trouble never comes alone. More than 700 people have been urgently evacuated from the elite Azimut Hotel in the center of Moscow. The sound of the fire alarm echoed throughout the hotel. Social media reports describe panic and chaos. The exact causes and information about any victims are being clarified.